watching Roll Tide Daily, the new daily program for Crimson Tide fans, presented by SEC Country. Now, here's your host, former Alabama All-American, Mike Johnson.
Hey everyone, and welcome back in on this beautiful Tuesday to another episode of Roll Tide Daily. My name is Mike Johnson. I'll be your host here for the next 30 minutes, bringing you the very best and the latest in Alabama football news and coverage, coming your way from SEC Country and literally all the outlets throughout the Southeastern Conference, throughout the Southeastern United States. Appreciate you guys joining us. As always, invite you guys to share the show, invite you guys to be a part of our YouTube, Facebook comment section, anywhere else you can reach us, really, throughout the social media networks. Want you guys to be coming across here. I'm having trouble getting the Facebook feed up on my own computer. Hope you guys are able to kind of hear me out there out in Facebook land, and we're going to get some things squared away, obviously, in terms of YouTube, in terms of Facebook, in terms of everything else kind of going on, trying to get this show up and running so you guys can follow along with us. So, but without further ado, I want to get to today's question today. Yesterday, we kind of touched on, who's the most important non-quarterback on the roster for Alabama? Who's one of those guys? Is it a linebacker? Is it a defensive lineman? Is it one of these guys back in the secondary that's going to be one of the most important non-quarterbacks on the roster for Alabama? Well, today, we're going to dive a little bit later into Nick Saban, his feelings with his father, his feelings from the Mercedes-Benz dealership that he has up at the Music City. I want to hear about you guys' memories with your dad. Obviously, Father's Day was this past Sunday. I want to hear about your favorite memory that has to do with your dad and Alabama football. I think anytime you guys can go back and talk about your dad, and you guys, if you're like me, taking your dad up to an Alabama game, smoking a stogie on the third Saturday in October, always going to be a big deal as far as a lot of those things continue to go. So continue to follow along with us. I'll reset here for a second because I know the Facebook feed is back up now. My name is Mike Johnson. This is Roll Tide Daily, and a huge, really full show coming at you guys in terms of things we're going to talk about. Non-quarterback players that are going to be important. I'm going to name my list here in a second. We're going to have Chris Kirshner, our recruiting analyst here at SEC Country. He's going to come on later on the show to talk about Justin Eboigbe from Georgia that just committed to Alabama and really what's next for the Alabama Crimson Tide as we move through these huge summer months in terms of recruiting. But without further ado, let's get rolling on the show, and let's get rolling on to topic number one. And listen, I think this is a big deal for a lot of different reasons. Now, we did talk a little bit yesterday about some of the players that you think are going to be important factors for Alabama moving forward through this 2018 season, and everybody talks about Tua. Everybody talks about Jalen. Everybody talks about the quarterback position like it's really going to have a huge impact on Alabama football. Most Bama fans know that, hey, we're going to be pretty good no matter what quarterback gets in there. So Sports Illustrated is getting close to releasing their, every summer they release their top 100 players from college football. And usually there are quite a few Bama players on that list. But before they get their list out, they wanted to go ahead and head things off and let you know that they had some snubs in there. And a couple of Bama players have already been put out in terms of Sports Illustrated snubs before they even get into this top 100 list. And I thought a couple of these guys really go into this, kind of conversation about Bama's most important non-quarterback players. The first snub that Sports Illustrated named, Jerry Jeudy, who was the second leading wide receiver behind Calvin Ridley last year. Here's what Sports Illustrated had to say in their kind of snub list before they get to their top 100. He tore his meniscus in spring ball, but he's expected to be fine for the start of the season. A year ago, he was the Tide's second leading receiver behind Calvin Ridley, and though he didn't put up huge numbers, he's expected to start in 2018. Now, he did not put up big numbers last year. When you look at his numbers last year, they really are pedestrian in terms of what they were able to do with the wide receiver core. Calvin Ridley, as most of you guys know, was far and away the biggest leading receiver in terms of Alabama football. I think that's going to change this year. One of the guys that should change that is Jerry Jeudy. Now, it is a loaded, young wide receiver core. There are very many guys in that wide receiver core that can kind of do similar things. But Jerry Jeudy has his own kind of talent base, his own ability to go up and win 50-50 balls. He's got speed. He's got power. He's got the whole combination. I do find it understandable that Sports Illustrated snubbed him. He is not yet Alabama's number one receiver, but I think by the end of the year he probably will be if it's not one of the other younger guys. Another young guy who was also a true freshman last year and also played a big part in last year's season was the second leading rusher for a lot of the year. That's Najee Harris. Sports Illustrated also included Najee Harris on one of those guys they have already snubbed out of their top 100 list. Here's what they had to say about Najee Harris right here. And I think it's When you talk about Najee Harris and you talk about Damian Harris and you talk about Josh Jacobs and you talk about really that entire running back core, Najee Harris really is the one with the most upside. And here's what Sports Illustrated had to say about him. A relative afterthought among a talented running backs core all season. Harris sparked Alabama in the national title game. You guys remember a couple of those long runs he ripped off against Georgia. With Bo Scarborough off to the NFL, Harris should get more carries. And if that final quarter of 2017 is any indication, he seems poised for a breakout. Now, I love Najee Harris. I love the power, size, and speed combination this guy brings to the table. I know that a lot of people probably agree with me down in the comments section. He's a unique player. I mean, he really is. When you talk about the number one running back coming out, possibly the number one recruit coming out a couple of years ago in that signing class, he's proven to be a big part. We're going to get into it a little bit later about what I see going on with Damian Harris. A lot of you guys chimed in yesterday on the non-quarterback situation. I heard Raekwon Davis. I heard, Patrick Surtain. I heard a lot of the different things going on. I wanted to make sure I got my top 5 list out there. And I think that I've got this thing sparked up to really nail down the 5 players I think are the most important non-quarterback players when we talk about this Alabama roster moving into the 2018 season. I have that list to show you guys right here, along with the reasons that I think it's going to be a big deal that each one of these players kind of shows up for this team in 2018. We're going to get to the list here in just a second and put it on the screen, but my list does start off with Deontay Thompson. I know a lot of what people think about in terms of the secondary. A lot of new players back there. Boy, a ton of new faces. Savion Smith, Patrick Surtain. Deontay Thompson is one of these guys that at the end of the year had a little bit of experience back in that secondary. He played against Clemson. He played against Georgia. He's seen some of the things you're going to see in these full-speed games. I think being the most experienced guy back there in the young secondary is a big part of that. Number 4 for me, Ross Pierschbacher. Whenever you talk about Ross Pierschbacher, you talk about him moving to left guard to center, a 3-year starter. He's going to be a new center, snapping the ball for the first time in his career. He's also possibly going to have a new quarterback behind him, so I think that really tends to lean heavily on the way I think about him. Number 3 on my list, a guy that needs no introduction in terms of people that watched this team last year, but I think he's very, very important because of that young secondary that I mentioned to go with Deontay Thompson. That's Raekwon Davis. Obviously, he's 6'8". He's 310 pounds. He runs a 4.7 40 or whatever it is. This guy needs to wreak havoc up front. If you want a way to make your secondary look really good in the back end of that defense, wreak havoc up front. Don't give those quarterbacks that you're going to be playing from Ole Miss and Texas A&M and throughout the SEC West schedule, don't give them an opportunity to throw the football downfield. I think it's a huge deal for Raekwon Davis to kind of have a big year. Number 2 on my list. Now, we did talk about Najee Harris earlier and his possible snubs, and I understand a lot of fans look at it and say, boy, we've got running back by committee, right? We've got all these guys back there. I'm just telling you guys, from what I've seen in my own playing career and from what I've experienced, looking back on the 2015 season, the 2012 season, 2011 season, Bama is best when they have a bell cow back. Now, I think that will be Damian Harris this year. Nobody else in that backfield has a combination of lateral quickness along with top-end speed and really just a guy who's played a ton of football the way that Damian Harris has played for Alabama. I think that's really what you're looking forward to when you're talking about Damian Harris. I think he kind of separates himself at the end of the year to become that bell cow back and be really what a lot of Bama fans clamor for in the backfield in terms of running back. I think he ends up taking on that Eddie Lacy, Derrick Henry, Mark Ingram style of role where, you know what, when it's the fourth quarter, this guy gets the football and he's able to kind of put the game away. Number 1 on my list, another guy that needs no introduction, and that's because of the position he plays, on the defense he plays it at, and the school that defense is at. That's our guy, Mack Wilson. Now, I heard a ton of words coming out in the last couple of days. You've heard Rolando McClain speak on it. Dante Hightower's put in his input. Mack Wilson is the key to the season, in my opinion. Maybe even more so than the quarterback position. Honestly, I know people, they look at me, they think I'm crazy when they say that. Mack Wilson is the key to this football season as far as Alabama football goes. Can he stay healthy? Can he round this defense into form? Can he be the leader that Nick Saban needs? Mack Wilson is that guy. He's really going to be the glue that holds a ton of things together. A lot of you guys are kind of weighing in the comment section. Trey Truss says Raekwon a monster. Rose Hollis says Roll Tide Roll from West Monroe, Louisiana. Roll Tide from Atmore, Alabama. Terry Truss says Mack Wilson is that dude. Absolutely agree with that. William Lee chiming in and saying a nice DE grab yesterday, and he is talking about Justin Eboigbe. And without further ado, I think we do have Chris Kirshner on the phone. This is going to be a great conversation. Chris, man, how you doing today?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man, and I appreciate you joining us, really. And it couldn't be better timing from a lot of different aspects. We do have the news coming out yesterday. Literally, while I'm on the air, in the comment section, people are announcing to me that Justin Eboigbe has kind of announced his commitment. I think we have the computer graphic to show people on the screen here, the Twitter feed that Justin Eboigbe put out yesterday. You know, he kind of gives thanks to God. He thanks his mom. He thanks everybody else that's been involved down at Forest Park High School here right outside of Atlanta. And at the end of it says, I am 100% committed to the University of Alabama. Now, Chris, I know that you've seen a lot of the camp circuit. I know you've followed a lot of this recruiting in this particular instance. What is Bama getting in a guy like Justin Eboigbe? Am I even saying that name right? I mean, what can Bama fans expect when this guy hopefully signs on the dotted line later on in December or February? What kind of player is showing up on campus in this guy?
Yeah, I think Alabama definitely got a stud in Justin Eboigbe out of Georgia yesterday. Definitely a commitment that I did not expect. I mean, I've talked to several people, and he was always mentioned as a defensive line target for Alabama, but it just seemed like others were ahead of him at the time. I guess not, obviously, with Alabama accepting his commitment. But as far as what kind of player Alabama is getting in him, I mean, he's 6'5", 263, definitely good size. A lot of the people I've talked to since yesterday about Eboigbe, a lot of them have said that he's kind of a raw talent, very big upside. Alabama has prioritized him for quite some time. I mean, actually, when Derek Ansley was back on staff, former defensive backs coach, he was the one that really kind of discovered him for the Alabama staff, and ever since then, you know, they've gotten him to Tuscaloosa. He was just in Tuscaloosa a few days ago and really solidified his decision then. So I do think that this is a very important commitment for Alabama, being that defensive line depth is very critical in this 2018 class, and Alabama definitely got one of the best ones in Under Armour All-American Justin Eboigbe.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's any question about kind of that top elite level of talent. We've heard it from all the news sources since this news comes out yesterday about what kind of player I think Alabama is getting. Another guy, and you mentioned Justin Eboigbe kind of really solidifying things this past weekend there in Tuscaloosa. Another guy who we're hearing, Chris, that really enjoyed himself this past weekend and really enjoys Tuscaloosa as a whole, that's five-star linebacker Nakobe Dean. Now, I think following his commitment, everybody is really excited about the possibilities that he could have at Alabama. I mean, what are we looking at here? What are the odds that Bama's able to land a guy like Dean? I mean, this is somebody who everybody is after right now, including Georgia, including all the top programs throughout college football. Are the odds looking good for Alabama? Is it a coin flip at this point, or do you think he has any kind of leanings as far as where he's going to school at?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the odds of Alabama getting Nakobe Dean are solid. I definitely wouldn't give a prediction either way, just because there are still several months to go. He's dead set. I asked him when he was planning on deciding, and he said he's dead set on deciding in December. So we still have half a year left to go with his recruitment. I think it's good that Alabama did get this official visit, in the past now, just because he told me that this official visit really had the opportunity to develop relationships with the players. That was something that he really didn't experience on his past trips to Tuscaloosa. I mean, he's been there at least 5 times now since his recruitment has taken off. So he really got a chance to develop relationships with the players, got a lot of one-on-one time with the coaches, and that was important to him. So I do think that Alabama has a good chance with him. He specifically told me the other day that Alabama did everything it needed to do to land his commitment, and now it's just on him. He wants to still take other visits. He said Georgia and LSU are 2 schools that are definitely going to get an official visit from him. So we'll see what happens. I mean, I think Georgia is definitely Alabama's top competition right now for Nakobe Dean. He took 2 visits to Athens recently and was absolutely blown away. Specifically, his mother was blown away. She said that the Georgia visit, that first Georgia visit they took a few weeks ago, was the best visit that they've ever been on. And Nakobe backed that up when I talked to him the other day. His mom still feels that way about Athens. So I think Georgia is definitely Alabama's biggest competitor right now.
Yeah, I think that's 100% true. When you talk about the landscape that has been Kirby Smart, especially with linebackers here in the last few years, I think Bama, Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, all those are going to be really going head up for some time to go. Now, another guy, Chris, I need you to calm me down here. I need you to calm me down about the news that comes out this weekend. And that's about our guy Talia Tagovailoa. You know, the news comes out that he's headed up to Knoxville for a visit up there with Jeremy Pruitt and company. Obviously, he's a Bama commit. Obviously, you know, the things are really, I don't want to say in turmoil, but a lot of things up in the air in terms of Tagovailoa's and the starting quarterback position down there at Alabama. And the news comes out that Talia Tagovailoa, an Alabama commits, headed up to Knoxville for the weekend. I mean, should Alabama fans be nervous about this? Do you give Tennessee any credit here or any percentage of a chance that they're able to really get his signature on the dotted line come signing day?
Yeah, I mean, anytime a commitment visits another school, there's always a little cause for concern. And I would say with Talia's commitment status, the only way that I can see him not choosing Alabama is if Tua ends up losing the starting quarterback job and then they decide to transfer. Which, again, that was going to happen. Even though Tua said that his comments were taken out of context, it was going to happen if he didn't play in that national championship game. So the only way that I see Talia not going to Alabama next season is if Tua decides to transfer, and if he doesn't win the starting quarterback job. If he does win the starting quarterback job and he remains at Alabama, then there's I would say a 0.00001% chance that Talia goes elsewhere. I mean, the comfortability that he has in Tuscaloosa, he's been at Tuscaloosa so many times now. He's pretty much at Alabama every single week now, hanging out with Tua and the team. He has very good relationships with a lot of the players on the roster, and that matters. Obviously, with a quarterback, he wants to have very strong relationships with everybody in the locker room, and he already has that. So he knows that, yes, there's going to be a competition when he does get to Alabama, a quarterback competition with Paul Tyson, obviously, in his class, and then whoever's left with this current quarterback group. So he knows what he's getting himself into, but I wouldn't really be too concerned about Talia's commitment status as of right now.
Interesting storyline to kind of follow. It really kind of highlights the fact that Nick Saban not only making a decision about Tua versus Jalen this fall, could be making a decision down the road as far as Talia goes, when you're making that decision this coming year too. I think that's a really interesting storyline for a lot of Bama fans. If you're not aware, that probably need to follow along with kind of that story of Talia, kind of in the shadow, obviously, of Tua right now, but that could obviously be a huge decision coming up. Now, another guy that Bama is obviously recruiting, I guess you'd say at this point. The news comes out, Chris, over the weekend about Nick Saban offering an 8th grader. I think it's Keontae Goodwin is how you say this name. 6'8", 370 pounds, a size 18 shoe. I mean, what do you read into this? To me, Chris, and this is coming from the absolute meathead football player in me, I think it's kind of a stretch to go back and offer, an 8th grader, a guy going into 9th grade. You don't really know. I mean, especially for a 370 pounder, what is that guy going to end up being? But I think Nick Saban looks at it and says, hey, listen, we have to get in on the ground level of this. We have to be a part of some of these first run of scholarship offers if we want to be a part of this kid's recruitment. I mean, what do you make of this? Is this a smart move by Saban? And do you think that, Keontae Goodwin in the long run could end up in a Crimson uniform?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not a bad thing. And I feel like last year Alabama kind of got burned a little bit in their recruiting cycle just because they waited quite some time to offer some kids, and then, we saw on signing day things didn't really go Alabama's way for several recruits, and especially a guy like Malik Langham. He was an in-state kid. Alabama didn't offer until late in the process. He decided to go to Florida. So I think that Alabama, especially this cycle, they already have 16 commitments. They have not slow played a lot of people, and sometimes in the past that Alabama has definitely done that. I don't think it hurts to offer an 8th grade kid who obviously has the size, and we'll see how he develops in the future. I mean, Alabama offered Dylan Moses back in the 8th grade, and now he's a starting linebacker for the current team now. So it doesn't hurt offering these kids because, for one, verbal scholarships, the majority of the time mean nothing. It's just the hey, we like you, and we want to see you develop over these next few years. And that's pretty much what a lot of these scholarship offers are, because Alabama definitely places a big emphasis on how these kids look in camp, how they do during their junior and senior seasons. So, yeah, I mean, it's nice that this kid got an offer from Alabama, but again, it pretty much means nothing until 3-4 years down the road to see how he looks during his junior and senior seasons.
Yeah, I agree with that, too. And we're getting some feedback here in the comment section. Jacob Hunter Allen also pointing to Dylan Moses, saying he was an 8th grader when we offered him. So, listen, I hope it turns out great, and I hope that, Keontae Goodwin ends up being a great player for Alabama on down the road. I couldn't believe it, Chris. I about fell out of my chair yesterday when I found out we were recruiting somebody from the class of 2022. Good Lord. I graduated in 2005, for God's sakes. That's been a long time. So, all right, last question before we let you go. Now, we've heard some chatter, and I've heard some chatter really on social media, on Twitter, and some of the other outlets that this might not, Justin and Boisby might not be the end this week as far as Alabama goes and as far as recruiting. I mean, is there anybody you can point to? Can you hint to us what's next here in terms of Alabama recruiting? I mean, this is already the #1 recruiting class. You got 16 guys already committed. There's a lot of ESPN 300 names out there that are coming in this recruiting class. Who's next on the docket? I mean, who can we possibly be looking at here in the coming weeks that, agrees to commit to Alabama?
Yeah, well, as you said, Justin Boybe commits yesterday, and shortly after he committed, I was told that Alabama got 4 commitments yesterday. So 3 of those guys are obviously silently committed right now, with the Boybe being the only one that went public. And then that was backed up by Brent Key, Alabama's offensive line coach. He did his bat signal for when Alabama gets commitments, and you saw 4 Roland 19 hashtags, which is the signal that Alabama has gotten the commitment. That's what they've been doing for this class. So it turns out that Alabama got 4 commitments yesterday. One of them went public. I think at least one guy that I would definitely keep an eye on this week is wide receiver John Mechie. Mechie took an official visit to Tuscaloosa this weekend. I'll actually have a story on him in a few hours. I definitely think that Alabama is the favorite to land his commitment whenever he decides. It would not surprise me at all to see him commit this weekend. Not this weekend, but just sometime during this week. So we'll see what happens there. He's a very, very important wide receiver target for Alabama in this 2019 class. And then this upcoming weekend, I mean, you have the Champions Cookout, Alabama's signature summer event. So many top targets will be in town. And it would not be a surprise to see a guy like Noah Pola-Gates, a 4-star cornerback out in Arizona, who has Alabama as his leader. Talked to him a few weeks ago. He said that it's possible that he ends up making a decision in the coming weeks. He's planning on committing in December, but he said it's definitely a possibility that he goes ahead and gets it done sooner than that. So those are 2 names in particular that I would definitely watch out for in these next few days.
That's excellent information, man. I think I speak for all the Alabama fans, especially in the comment section. So excited to see what's on the horizon for Nick Saban and company as far as recruiting goes. And, Chris, I know that you'll keep us updated on the latest. Everybody in the comment section, be sure to be on the lookout for that John Mechie story coming up here this afternoon from Chris Kirshner. Chris, man, you're the best in the business. Appreciate you joining us, and look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thanks, Mike.
That's Chris Kirshner from SECCountry.com, and obviously sharing office with Chris. And I'm telling you right now, we're very lucky to have him in terms of a guy that we can bounce a lot of this stuff over. Now, he did, he mentioned John Mechie as a possible name coming up. I think that could be a huge deal as far as Alabama recruiting goes. He's also an ESPN 300, player. As the outlook of this class to be able to jump up. Noah Pola-Gates, who that's a mouthful of a name, but also a guy that he points to possibly being one of those guys on the horizon that I think could be an impact player for Alabama for years to come. Jaleel Billingsley, another name that's being floated out there. I don't know what to expect, but I do know that I heard a lot of chatter out of Tuscaloosa yesterday that it is going to be a huge week recruiting for this Alabama class as they try to close in on yet another #1 class there under Nick Saban in Tuscaloosa. Now, the next topic I do want to get to on the show is something that came up probably a year ago, right? You've heard of Nick Saban at opening Mercedes-Benz dealerships throughout the Southeast, throughout Birmingham. Well, about a year ago, Nick Saban opened up his Mercedes-Benz dealership up in the Music City, up in Nashville. A lot of people pointing to the fact that he has been dedicating these Mercedes-Benz dealerships to members of his family. Well, I have it been, Father's Day a couple of days ago, and I asked you guys the question of the day, what's your favorite Bama memory with your father? Nick Saban, this kind of comes to light back again yesterday in terms of Nick Saban putting out this letter, really commemorating this Mercedes-Benz dealership to his dad. And here's what he had to say in this kind of article that kind of brings a lot of this to light. Now, this has been out for a little while here, but I thought it'd be great to remind a lot of you guys about what Nick Saban told about his dad. Now, this was part of this kind of outlet on the Mercedes-Benz of Music City website. The last conversation I had before Dad died of a sudden heart attack was in 1973. I told him I wanted to be a coach like him. He gave advice, as always. I'm happy you want to be a coach. However, the expectation, no matter what you choose to do, must always be to do your best and to be the best. I promised him I would always try. That's Nick Saban talking about the Mercedes dealership, talking about how that Mercedes-Benz dealership is really commemorating Nick Saban's senior's life. And there's a ton of great quotes. I mean, I have the story pulled up right here. Anytime you can talk about Nick Saban and his dad, one of the quotes from it, success is never final. It's a continuation. You need to focus on always doing the things that got you there, the things that made you successful. Another quote that I loved, everything I do, every choice, every decision is about striving to be a champion. It's all because of my father. I think that's something that we can talk about Father's Day, talk about Nick Saban, talking about really the impact he's had on so many lives at Alabama, myself being one of them. That's kind of a father figure. I think it's interesting to kind of hear when it comes from talking about really his point of view, talking about his own dad, to bring that back to light in light of Father's Day this past weekend, to talk about Nick Saban. I think that really gets a lot of people fired up in terms of the man that you really have leading this program. A lot of you guys have been really busy in the comment section today. Stephen Roll Tide Garrett there in his Facebook name. My only fear for Bama is a cornerback position. We lost a lot. I know we have some good guys still there. I just still have some fear in that area. Now, I think the talent level is going to be there. I think you talk about Savion Smith and Patrick Surtain, Deontay Thompson. I do get scared, though, when you talk about the early part of the season. Louisville, a team that's going to have a passing attack. Ole Miss, a team that's going to have a great passing attack. A team that has the number one wide receiver group in the country. There are going to be some early kind of hurdles for that DB group to join. Hopefully that defensive line and that linebacker core can jump up and really help them be a part of what's going on here. Sonia McTaggart weighs in on Talia and his visit to Tennessee. He's not going anywhere. Who would want to go to a team that cannot win crap at all? Roll Tide roll, baby, always for life. I wish that I was as confident as you are, but you heard Chris Kirshner say if Tua gets the starting job at Alabama, 0.0001% chance that he would ever go somewhere else right now. Jacob Hunter Allen weighing in, talking to Stephen Garrett. I know we will get Polo Gates, and I believe we can pull Jeffrey Carter. Well, I hope you're right. You talk about Polo Gates. I think that is a huge piece. You can mention the Nakobe Dean and some of the other 5-stars are going after Clay Webb. Polo Gates would be a huge pull-in for Alabama in terms of recruiting here in this cycle. Now, as you guys know, I do like to leave you with a video every day. We have had a good show today talking about really the non-quarterback position players you want to see really step up to the plate in 2018. I mentioned my top 5 list. We got Chris Kirshner on the phone talking about Justin Ebojbe and some of the things that you can look for on the horizon out of Alabama recruiting. Evidently going to be a very special week there in Tuscaloosa. One of the guys that's helping recruit, though, and I think this is a little bit, I guess this is a cringeworthy video for me because I'm not sure what I think of this video. One of the guys that's helping recruit, former Tennessee coach Butch Jones, and one of the guys that really is a target, Jaleel Billingsley. His father was at Nick Saban's house this past weekend, right? Now, doing the karaoke that you hear that Nick Saban and Terry, have all the parents over and really kind of had the party. They put the rings out on the table and make sure everybody's really comfortable, right? One of the guys that was comfortable, though, is Butch Jones. And he lets out a phrase that I never in a million years thought I would hear Butch Jones hear. Here's a quick little video of Butch Jones hanging out at Nick Saban's house, and Jaleel Billingsley's father is kind of filming him, and he gets a little bit of a Roll Tide. Here you guys go right here.
Record your boy. You got to record me. Let them know I'm having a good time, baby. Got my man, Coach Butch, in the building. Yes, sir.
Roll Tide.
Yes, sir.
Roll Tide.
Oh, my goodness gracious, man.
Yes, sir.
Roll
Some
Tide.
things you never thought you'd see. Talk about Butch Jones giving a peace sign at Nick Saban's house and giving it a Roll Tide, man. That's absolutely cringeworthy, and a lot of different people looking at that going, man, I don't want to see that. I don't want Butch Jones to have anything to do with that program. But hey, that's Butch Jones. Got a little gel in his hair. Got the top button kind of unbuttoned a little bit. Kind of feeling a little bit loose in terms of hanging out at Nick Saban's house. Listen, all hands on deck, I guess. And Nick Saban is one of those things you got to trust him. If he thinks Butch Jones is in the right place right now to help Alabama recruit, to help get Jaleel Billingsley on board. Nick Saban knows better than me that, that could be a big part of what's going on for years to come. Shannon Burgess comments over in the YouTube comment section, bumping Stevie Wonder. Now, I didn't get recruited by Nick Saban, so I haven't been a part of those scenarios, but I've heard those parties, those karaoke parties are absolutely legendary in terms of what Nick Saban's doing there. So the recruiting continues to roll. We're going to look for a ton more stories coming this week. Hopefully a few more commitments coming out. You heard it from Chris Kirschner himself. My name is Mike Johnson. I invite you to share the show. Obviously 30 minutes every Monday through Thursday at 1 o'clock Eastern time, noon Central. Love when you guys hang out. Love when you guys comment in the comment section. Thanks for everybody that's been a part of that comment section today, really getting things rolling in terms of being able to talk Bama football here in the middle of June. So invite you guys to come back tomorrow. Please, like I said, share the show with your friends. We're on YouTube. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. If you guys do like SEC Country Live, I'll be back this afternoon with Brandon Adams from Dog Nation Daily, and we'll be chopping it up on all things SEC football and delivering you a good hour of SEC Country football production here this afternoon. Until then, I hope you guys have a great Tuesday, and roll tide, everybody.
You've been watching Roll Tide Daily, the new daily program for Crimson Tide fans, presented by SEC Country.